All right, welcome back to Latter Day Takes. Joining on the pod today, not only do we have Brian back, it's been a minute,
Back.
we got former BYU football recruit Chase Hansen joining us today.
What an intro.
Remember, I told you I had something in mind already, but I wasn't going to tell you what it was. That's what it
Man,
was.
and I told you that in secrecy. I told you that in trust, and here you are using it against me.
In
Well, hey, man,
confidence. Unbelievable.
In
we
confidence.
we
Thank you, Brian.
we we, we are a truth-telling podcast. We don't we don't deceive the people at all.
Oh, good,
Uh,
good.
In all seriousness, though, Chase Hansen joins us. I've been getting to know Chase a lot, kind of over this past year, and it's been fun. We spent some time in St. George together recently. But Chase, what Chase brings to the table, besides his jovial attitude and always down for whatever, and just good presence overall, Chase, you've spent time in the NFL, and I want to hear more about that experience as we go along. We don't have to get into that right now. You played at the University of Utah. You were there 4 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
technically a little more than that if you count the little period I was there before my mission, but yeah.
gotcha. Okay, so I did that. The first question I actually have for you, right out the gate, for your time at University of Utah. So we already know that the Utah football coaching staff is very well known to be super racist. What's the most racist thing Kyle Whittingham has ever done?
Wow. Unreal.
So hot right now.
Coach Witt
I'm
is
Jeez.
one of
joking.
the
I'm joking. I'm
best
joking.
dudes I
Actually,
know.
I don't. I honestly, I don't doubt it, and I actually do have something to say. The reason why I bring that up is because obviously I'm joking, and like there's been that whole thing. I talked to a friend of mine who is a black coach in football who had told me he personally reached out to. I don't want to mention his name, but one of the coaches on the Utah coaching staff that had that whole thing, the debacle happen. And he was
Hmm.
like, "No, I just wanted to get an understanding." And like honestly, like it's all good, water under the bridge. Like like he's cool. Like he's a good dude. Like I've got no problems with him. He told me that out of his own volition actually. So I thought that was kind of cool. Anyway, just a
Yeah.
little full
Yeah.
circle there. I'm just a bitter BYU fan, but couldn't help myself.
Sure,
But
sure.
let's talk about your experience though, man. What was it like playing at the U? Let's get into that a bit.
I loved it. I loved it. I think you and I have talked about this a little bit here and there, but I loved playing at the U. I had kind of a funny experience just because I socially was in Provo all the time. Like my social life was in Provo. Like anytime I wanted
Hmm.
to go be social, all my buddies, all my friends, a lot of my people were down that way. But in terms of football, I loved it. I loved the coaches. I loved the staff. I loved the team. And that's the primary reason I went to Utah was for the football. And, I got to have a lot of cool church experiences there too, talking to guys, teaching guys, baptized a teammate of mine. And it was awesome. I had a great experience. It was all good things. Football was a roller coaster and the ups and the downs and all that. But it was a, it was a great experience and a positive experience for me in a lot of ways. But it wasn't all in Salt Lake, which is kind of funny to think back on with the whole Provo Salt Lake thing, BYU Utah.
That is funny, and like obviously because you had some friends that were down in Provo at BYU and things like that, and I mean we did talk about this for a second. I remember thinking like Provo really does kind of have that college town feel, and Salt Lake is definitely more kind of a metro area, and there's just a lot more going on, and it's a little bit harder to probably get that insulated feel because that's what it is. A college town feel is just kind of insulated. They just kind of have their own little world that they live in, which makes it more fun in some ways for that time in your life, but in other ways too, like it's not necessarily a real world experience as well. But you mentioned you baptized a teammate. How did that go, man? Talk about that.
Yeah, so my buddy Devonte Henry Cole, we call him DHC. We still talk and check in with each other, quite often. He was a buddy of mine who we just had our lockers nearby each other, and I mean, he was inquisitive from day one. He was always asking about stuff, just like a lot of teammates were. They're asking about garments, they're asking about temple, they're asking about your mission. They're curious. Guys come in from other places, and all of a sudden they're surrounded by former missionaries that they're playing with. And he was one of those guys who was super curious about it. I think he was mostly super curious about it because every girl he dated was a member. And he was always he said, dude, I'm only attracted to these Mormon girls. He's like, for some reason, every time I meet a girl that I'm attracted to in Utah, she's Mormon. Which I mean, it sounds obvious, but in Salt Lake, there's plenty of girls up there that aren't
Yeah, that's true.
these super churchy girls. And he's like, I just like they're the only ones that I want to date. He's like, I would love to learn more about it. So, long story short, he ended up dating a girl who's a member. Came and found me and basically said, I want to learn more about the church. I went and got the missionaries and we sat down, and there were a couple of sit downs where it was me, Britton Covey, and the missionaries, and Devontae and his girlfriend. And so we had some really cool experiences up there at the Institute where we're just running through, all his questions, and there were a lot. You can imagine this kid from Florida coming to Utah and learning about the church and considering being baptized. He had a lot of questions, but it was cool, and ended up having a really cool experience where he decided he wanted to be baptized and told me he wanted me to baptize him, and I got to, and it was just, creates kind of this special bond from there on out where we're still close and we're still buddies to this day. And yeah, it was a really special and unique experience for me because a part of the reason I wanted to go up there is because there's so much of that little bubble here in Utah County that I grew up in, and I was like, I think it'd be cool to go somewhere where I'm meeting different people. I mean, it's still Utah, but I got to go have those kind of experiences, which were cool and a blessing for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I had a question. Was he religious before, or was he just coming in kind of just like clean slate?
Not really.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he grew up with, I think, a Christian background, but it wasn't any specific faith that he was.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, for being a former missionary, a lot of times that's a good thing because
Yeah.
you're not having to compete
True.
with,
Tradition.
well, I was told this, and I was told this, and I was told this. He was more like, oh, this makes sense, and this feels right, and it just was, yeah. I honestly, I think that helped.
That's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah,
for
because
sure.
that's immediately what I thought. I was like, okay, well, is he that fresh, clean slate, right? Is it kind of just opening up to just religion in general? So that's really cool. It's
Yeah.
funny that he's from Florida because I went to the opening night with Florida coming in to play Utah with our with my buddy, and when the Utah dance team got out, you should have seen the entire bench falling in love with all the Utah Mormon girls. It was absolutely hilarious. We're all just sitting there. You could see every single one of them like looking and then look at each other, look at the girls, look at each other. I was dying. It was so funny.
The
So
Florida
good.
bench players
That's
were.
good.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was during
Man.
TV timeout or whatever. But yeah, all the players were obviously in their huddles, but all the backups were standing on the bench,
Yeah.
just
They got
watching.
nothing. They got nothing better to do than ogle the beautiful women, I guess.
Oh my gosh, it was so funny.
Well, like
Yeah.
that is kind of funny. Like I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong here, and maybe this is my bias and that the bubble that I live in Utah, but I feel like we're kind of known to have like beautiful women in this state, and maybe just beautiful people in general. Have you guys heard stuff like that?
No.
I feel like I have, but then when I bring it up to my buddies who are in like California or Texas, they're like, no, bro, Utah. I feel like everyone kind of has their bias, but I feel like I've heard it quite often.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard that too, but I don't know. I mean, I remember here when I lived in Texas for a while, I remember they didn't necessarily say Utah, but they did say there was like one girl that went off on quote unquote Mormons, and she was like, "Why is every Mormon I know like gorgeous?" And I was like, "Well, good question."
Let me
Boy.
tell you about it.
No, it was pretty funny though, because she's like, it's just weird, and I actually think the simplest explanation is probably having to do with just kind of the word of wisdom in a nutshell, right? That's like the Cliff Notes version where it's just kind of like we believe in just kind of taking care of our bodies a little bit more. With that said, though, and this is something a little bit of a tangent, I do think Utah struggles more with kind of the appearances thing and like plastic surgery. Like we see those billboards on I-15, like it's like every 3 billboards is something about like improving your body. I don't know. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about,
I think
right?
it's just in general. Yeah, I think it's just in general. But I mean, 'cause you
Is
drive
that
up
not a
and down the
Utah
streets,
thing?
you drive up and down the streets in Vegas. It's the same way.
Huh. I guess that
Yeah,
maybe just the world we're
Yeah.
living in.
maybe it's just the
I don't-
I-15 in general.
I got an idea. I'm going to throw your guys' way actually real quick. Is it possible that part of the subconscious issue that we have in Utah is that we believe that if you're living righteously, right, living righteously on and off the field, magic happens, right? So, sorry, I can't help myself. No, but if you're living righteously,
Is that a direct quote, Harper?
yeah, that's a direct quote.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
so.
I think
I
from
read that.
God.
Yeah, it was ringing a bell.
Yeah. Uh, no, at least in this in BYU receiving lore, he's a god at least. But anyway,
Oh
um,
boy.
Just
um,
let the record show I'm a Utah fan. Okay, go
yeah,
Utes.
we
I
know,
didn't know
dude.
that.
Okay,
Whatever.
all right.
I didn't
Yeah,
know
okay,
that.
there we go.
I felt
Okay,
like I
just
was
so I every
okay.
all these little like BYU things, like it's like, okay, Harper, we get it. You're a BYU fan.
See, I didn't know
Go
that, Brian. It's good to
lie.
Okay.
know. It's good to know.
I wouldn't even say he's
I'm
not even
I'm
like a
I'm an
real
adopted.
like Utah. Yeah, he's an it's all bogus, dude. It's all freaking bogus. His brother, however, is a huge BYU fan. That's on the
That's
record,
also
I think.
lies. That's on the record as lies as well.
Whatever, man. So
Most
what I
famous
was saying
quote from
though,
him.
yeah, that's actually probably true. That and another one that I'm thinking of in Toronto, but anyway. Um, uh, so before I was rudely interrupted, what I was talking about was that we believe if you're living a righteous life, like blessings will be manifest in a physical form a lot of times. Like not necessarily like it's pound for pound. It's like if I do this, then I will get this. But we believe that if you're living righteously, like your life will work out for the better. And a lot of times that's manifest through success, right? It's like you look like you're a successful person. You may have a lot of money, you have a nice house, nice cars, happy family. You may even look good physically. And I wonder if that has to do with it, where it's like people are trying to put the cart before the horse in Utah because they feel pressure to have the appearances of looking good, because therefore it must mean that they're living a better life internally. I don't know. Is that crazy? That's just one hypothesis I have.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to compare it to because to the last point, to Brian's point, I don't know if it's strictly a Utah thing. And part of me feels like it's also just maybe a 2023 thing. But I don't know.
Could be.
I
No,
do know, I do believe the fact that the Holy Ghost, that the Spirit does add physical beauty to your form. I think it's like a Parley P. Pratt quote or something like that, where he says something along the lines of like it, when you talk about like, oh, they're glowing or like they have the Spirit or whatever,
yeah.
and sometimes it comes off kind of cheesy or corny, but I honestly feel like I feel like it's valid. Obviously,
I
this is
actually
going in a completely different direction of what you were talking about, where people are trying to fix their physical form first. But I do think there's something to
no,
say
no,
about
it's kind
people
of
that
tied
are
together
like
though.
that have the Spirit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and I actually think it's tied together ultimately because it along the lines of what I'm saying is to your point, if you have the Holy Ghost in your life, like you have kind of this nice physical presence. I do agree with that. I feel like I've seen that before, where it's like something about that person, like they just have this attractive personality and they even look more attractive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like people are trying to shortcut to get to that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's
I
that's
get what you're
that's what I'm
saying.
talking about.
I get what you're
And
saying.
like I said, I don't mean to be coming off hard on my fellow Utah citizens here. I love this place. I love the people of Utah. I'm not one of those that's like ashamed even a little bit to live in Utah. I just know we have our quirks, and it's an interesting
Sure.
culture here that is worth pointing out and trying to be objective about. And I'm sure I fall bias in many ways, for better or for worse. But just something that I had in mind. Um,
Super unique for sure.
yeah,
I mean, you talk to people who come from outside of Utah and come here, that there's not many. I mean, it's obviously very unique in a lot of ways. I will say, to
yeah,
take that a little, just one step further too, though, even the people, I'll say in this situation, girls that I've met outside of Utah that have their own faith, that are these, rock solid girls that have a lot going for them, like they're really kind, good hearted. I feel like they have that same glow. I don't think it's strictly like a member of the Church of Jesus Christ thing when we talk about it. I think it
totally
also
agree.
goes to just saying, like, when you meet someone who's just like a good-hearted, kind, loving, warm person, I think it can be that same thing. So when you go to other places where they're just like full of love and kindness, I think it's a
Yeah.
similar glow as hopefully what people see when come here and meet a lot of people as well.
I
Well,
would
it's just
totally agree with that.
it's the spirit of Christ, right? Like everybody has the spirit of Christ in them.
Right.
So, and that's what it comes down to. And I think it also comes like the attraction and things like that is just being like-minded and having the same values and things like that, right? Like that all kind of coincides together where it's like, okay, yeah, like well, there's a lot more than just the exterior. There's that personality, there's the the mindset and all of that stuff that kind of coincides. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed.
Yeah. Um, so speaking of Utah, the I kind of referenced this right before we started recording. I don't think either of you really heard about it. Maybe Brian did. I can't remember. But you know Tim Ballard, you know the Operation Underground Railroad, you know Sound of Freedom, the movie that just came out. Did you guys see it?
Hmm.
I didn't.
Did you see Brian? Oh,
I
Brian,
didn't.
you're missing out, man. It's a really good movie. Jim
I'm waiting for it
Caviezel
to come out
just killed it.
Yeah.
streaming.
Heavy, but
Heavy.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, really, really well done, and it's exciting to see. I think it's made like over $180 million,
Yeah. It's
and
awesome.
which is great because that means because Angel Studios owns it, from what I understand, and that means Angel Studios is then going to be able to take a bunch of that money and repurpose it and make more awesome movies. Would be my guess. So I'm
Hmm.
excited to see that because Angel Studios is the same one that did The Chosen, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. They
so
killed that too.
exactly. And
Yeah.
they're clearly doing something right. So The Chosen and then Sound of Freedom. And like, hopefully, what this means is that they can start picking apart some really religious actors in Hollywood that haven't come out of the religious closet, so to speak, yet, and get some amazing talent to work with them and like just to completely abandon Hollywood altogether. It'd be interesting to see what comes of that. But to get a little bit, you know, darker along those lines. So there's recent news that came out about Tim Ballard. Uh, apparently, like within the last couple weeks, like Vice, within like the last week and a half, Vice released this article that talks about like how Operation Underground Railroad cut ties with him. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints cut ties with him. They had so Vice reached out when the media approaches the church to get some sort of statement. That's the only time the church will make a statement. So when they were approached about the Tim Ballard situation, they made a statement. Otherwise, there wasn't any like big statement, and the church basically said we kind of denounce any relationship that he's claimed to have had with M. Russell Ballard, which they're not related, and Tim Ballard apparently has never said that. But apparently he's like made overtures that they've got this really good relationship and that for that reason he would use his name to get like people to join in on the cause, maybe donate money and other things like that, lean into the church and kind of their support as well. It gets a little bit weird. It talks about like how he talked with a psychic about Nephi and how Nephi would give him information about like where he needed to go for certain. I can't remember exactly. The article got very weird. Um, I don't know what to believe. I'll tell you right now, there's no way I'm accepting Vice's article wholesale. There's no way. I've seen enough bogus stuff written in mainstream media
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not buying it all. However, the church did scrub their site from of Tim
Didn't listen.
Ballard's Operation Underground
I don't
Railroad
know.
thing. They had like a reference to it, and that's not there anymore. And the statement they made apparently on Tim Ballard was also real, and it seems to mean that they've like severed some ties with him. And furthermore, since that article came out initially, there's been another follow up saying that Tim Ballard's been accused of like of all things some type of I don't know if it was full on assault, but it was like sexual harassment type stuff. Like 7 women have come forward about it. It's ugly, ugly stuff all of a
That is
sudden coming out
crazy.
on Timbo, right?
That's crazy.
Maybe there's not a lot to discuss there, but
Well,
breaking news
I
for
think
you
what would be
guys.
really sad is if people connected Tim Ballard, like let's say that it's all true, especially the assault stuff. I think it would be really sad if that affected the work that is being done
Yeah,
in the child, trafficking world because, or I don't know. It just it'll probably make a lot of people skeptical and start questioning not only him, obviously, but what he has been trying to represent and stop and combat, which I mean
Shouldn't
that
be
would be tough.
related, right? Yeah. You'd
They
hope that
shouldn't
people
be.
can compartmentalize. Yeah.
Right.
Um, I think it's I think it's possible that two things can be true at once, like you're saying. Like what he's doing is a very good thing still, but maybe how he's going about doing it is a little bit less than stellar, maybe even ugly in some ways. But I think one thing that people aren't really talking a lot about is that for somebody to do what he does, which is freaking orchestrate these crazy sting operations where he's taking tons of people to foreign countries to deal with these traffickers that have children that they're selling out specifically for sexual things, which is absolutely awful. And he's orchestrating this whole thing and getting these guys in prison and like capturing them, freeing these children in the process. In order to do all of that, unfortunately, I think it takes somebody who might be a little bit like not crazy necessarily, but like a different type of person is my point. And these are the type of people that maybe their weaknesses come downstream from that and they start to believe in their own power, so to speak, and like what they're doing, and they start to view themselves as like putting themselves on a pedestal, and for that reason they then kind of like lose, like they don't have a good grasp on exactly what their humility should be. I mean, it's kind of like King David in some respects, right? Like his fall from grace is kind of somewhat similar, perhaps. Like, not only did he not leave the roof when Bathsheba was out in the open and exposed, he then went to have an affair with her, and then furthermore, essentially killed her husband. And this was the guy that like saved Israel years prior. So anyway, it's just we see all sorts of King David stories, and it doesn't take away from the fact that King David still slew Goliath. I mean, that's what Tim Ballard did, and we can acknowledge that still. But the fact that maybe some of this is true is really sad, but it still doesn't take away any of his efforts, and it doesn't mean Operation Underground Railroad isn't still a good movement. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because I know nothing about. I mean, this is the first I'm hearing of it, so I feel like I would
Yeah,
have to. I think step one is, what's true and what's not true, and what's accurate and what's false. And I think step two is, okay, well, let's make sure that the good that's being done continues to be done and recognize that it's a lot bigger than one guy because he's obviously
for
been
sure.
the, you know, kind
Right,
of the
he's
main
the
focus
face.
of it. He
Yeah,
is the face. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and there's always the face is always going to be the target of naysayers and things like that. I mean, you look at any movement, right? Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Martin Luther, right? Like you can go back throughout history, all the way through, and it's just you're always going to have that face that's going to be, ridiculed and attacked on one side or the other. So
right.
yeah,
Right.
fair enough. Um, all right. Well, let's maybe change this to a little bit of a lighter tone. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. I will say this also real quick to tie a bow on it. Tim Ballard has come out and denied everything. He said the Vice article was completely fabricated. I don't know if he's had a response since the sexual misconduct stuff has come out, but I know that the initial Vice News article, he came out and just said it's all wrong. So take that for what it's worth.
Hmm.
Anyway, um,
I got a question for Chase. If we're gonna,
yeah, we're
so
going back to
you,
Chase. I
you
want to talk more
yeah,
about his sporting
we talked about
experiences.
your one teammate that you were able to baptize. Uh, do you have any other teammates that were baptized or that you were kind of had that missionary experience with, whether it was at University of Utah or in the NFL?
Uh, Not baptized. Devontae was the one that I got the opportunity to baptize, and there were, but I would almost, I wouldn't say on a daily basis, but I would say on a weekly basis in both college and the NFL, I'm having church conversations in the locker room. And I think it's for a couple of reasons, but I also just, I love having those conversations. I mean, I like having those conversations with anybody and everybody. I think faith and the concept of faith, even at maybe times in my life where I haven't just been like, as solid in my own faith as maybe other times, I'm fascinated by what people believe, why they believe it. Like what gets someone to that point of believing their faith? Is it how they're brought up? Is it their culture? Is it, whatever it is? And so I've been able to have a lot of really cool conversations about faith in and out of locker rooms with, guys in my life. I think in part because it's something that I'm passionate about, and I'm passionate about, why people believe what they do as well as sharing what I believe. And so a lot of cool experiences, the classic garment experiences in the locker rooms where guys want to know what garments are, and then I got to find a way to explain to them what garments are, and the temple and my mission and all these different things that are, because if you think about it, we're weird. Like as a church, we are so unique, man. And I fully embrace it. I love it,
Yeah.
and I'm fully aware. Like I get, why you think we're a cult. I get why you think we're weird. I get why you think like this is so different, and it's a part of the reason that I love it, because the reality is, it's either like all true, or it's all a lie. Like it's kind of the way my mind works, is a little bit more black and white, and so I mean it's fun to have those conversations because I like being challenged. I like to think that I'm pretty open minded, but I also don't want to be a part of something just because it's how I was raised. I like being challenged and challenging other guys and having the open conversations. And I think where it gets tricky now is sometimes it's hard to have those conversations because it feels like there's certain things you can and can't talk about, or should or shouldn't talk about, or whatnot. But the times where I'm able to have super open and honest conversations throughout my football journey has been really cool, a lot of fun.
Were there any that surprised you, like in a locker room or anything, where like this player being like, "Wow, I did not think you would take an interest in any of this, but here we are talking about my faith, your faith, whatever
A
else."
lot. Yeah, there were
Yeah.
there were a lot that surprised me. There was one day, I don't know if you guys know who Marcus Davenport is, but he's this big giant stud of a defensive end in the NFL, and he's one of the freakiest athletes I've ever been around. He's had a hard time staying healthy for a long time, but like when he was healthy, he was one of the scariest human beings I've ever seen. And one day during practice, someone was talking to me, or like right before practice, someone was talking to me about my mission where I served. Taysom and I both served in Australia, and so we're talking a little bit about that. And Marcus comes up to me and goes, "Hey, I'm Mormon, right?" I was like, "What?" And he goes,
What?
"Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, my mom got baptized when I was like 12, and I got baptized." And he starts talking to me about the fact that he's a member of the church, and we talked about it a bunch of times after that, and he liked talking about it. He's this quiet guy, heart of gold, best dude, loved anime, like kind of like a gamer nerd dude, but a crazy good football player. And then we would have these conversations about faith and philosophy, and he's a reader, and we just had a lot of really cool conversations that I never would have ever suspected before. And it was like on the middle of the practice field. I'm like, I there's no way I would have ever suspected that. So that's one for
That's
sure.
that's
That's
awesome.
funny. Yeah, he
Yeah,
he
yeah.
got baptized.
He
Wait, so
did
you
as
didn't?
a kid, and then yeah,
Yeah,
life happened.
I actually there was this girl I was talking to recently, kind of like similar situation. She was telling about her upbringing, like very unique story. Like had like I think she said she no joke had like 16 siblings.
Hmm.
Has a twin sister. Her mom raised her and a bunch of her siblings for like a lot of her childhood, but then they not all the siblings shared the same father, so there's that aspect which kind of like clarifies some of that. But she didn't realize it, but she and her sister had gotten baptized when they were like 10 years old because their
Hmm.
mom got baptized. And then it wasn't until like they were 16 or 17 when they started having friends. We grew up in Southern California that were inviting them to like seminary and other events like that tied to the church. And they were like, this seems familiar. And then one time they went to church and this older lady came up to them and she's like, I don't think you remember me, but I went to your baptism. And they're like, what are you talking about? They're like, you guys got baptized in this building. I was there. I remember you two cute little twin girls that got baptized. And these girls pop. Like I could see that why this woman would recognize them. And after that, they're like, so they went through and searched through it, and they like had records in the church. And anyway, so it's kind of funny how that all came about, and then
Hmm.
eventually ended up moving to Utah and all that stuff. But kind of crazy
Yeah,
story there. Where'd you serve in Australia?
Brisbane. So northeast Australia.
And where was Taysom?
Taysom was Sydney, I think. Pretty
Okay.
sure he was Sydney.
So just to clarify for anybody listening, that's Taysom Hill who Chase played with. Listen, I'm not going where you think I'm going, Brian. I freaking love Taysom Hill. My fantasy football team name may or may not be Gay Sum for Taysom, but
Oh boy,
regardless,
it's creative.
but thank
And
you.
there it is.
Yeah, I thought of that, by the way. That is an original.
I believe
I'm
it.
the first person. Dang it. You know what? That was like kind of insulting.
No, I didn't. I didn't mean it like that. I'm just saying
Oh, that's great.
you're a
Oh, you
creative
deserve
guy.
that
I
one.
didn't
Yes,
mean it like that.
100%.
I'm
Yes.
not.
No, no, stand by it. Stand by it.
No.
I support you. I support you, Chase. Stand by it.
If you did mean it, that would have been honestly like one of the best insults in that scenario. Like I thought of it on my own, and then someone be like, "I don't doubt it."
No, I'm trying to be careful with my words here because I'm not trying to play that off as an insult. I'm just saying
For
creative,
sure.
That's
Yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah.
creative
Exactly.
guy. Yeah,
To each their own. Appreciate it, man.
sure, sure.
But yeah, anyway, I wasn't going there. That's Taysom Hill, quarterback at BYU, and then played at this, still on the Saints, played a lot with Chase, obviously on the Saints, on the roster. They're the ones that were having the conversation with, what was his first name? Davenport?
Oh, Marcus. Yeah,
Marcus Davenport. So just to
yeah.
kind of clarify that.
It's funny you said
So
that Marcus was into anime and things like that. I always found it like very interesting to see all of the different interests with my teammates as well. Like I had some buddies that were like extremely into anime, same thing. Like, but I found teammates also that were into wrestling or super gamers or whatever it was. Like just these obscure things that I don't think like normal fans understand that like there's a lot of nerds. There's a lot of like just different individuals when it comes to being athletes in general, right? Like we have to find things to do in our off time of not training and things like that, or the downtime. It's just it's always funny to hear about the other interests of teammates.
Yeah.
who's the biggest nerds you guys played with? But like that people might know of. Like they have to have like a
Ooh.
name that maybe somebody would recognize, but also
Oh,
have to have that nerd level be super high.
I got mine.
I got mine. Yeah.
Go ahead, Chase.
I'm gonna say my buddy Caden Ellis, who his dad Luther Ellis played for Utah, for those who don't know the name. He played with me in New Orleans, and he actually just signed a big old fat contract in Atlanta with the Falcons. He's a linebacker. And you talk about someone who glows because of their spirit and their faith and their kind good-heartedness. He is like the very top of that list. He's not a member of the church, but just like the most rock solid, probably one of the best hearted dudes I've ever met in my life, but the biggest nerd. We were roommates at fall camp in New Orleans, my first year there. And every single day, every single night, he's like, dude, let's watch anime. Like, let's watch anime. I'm like, kid, I do not want to watch anime. He's over on his phone watching it by himself. We're riding on the buses to games, anime, anime. On the flights to games, away from games, anime, anime. Like, it is constant. He knows his anime knowledge and his gamer knowledge and his movie knowledge is unmatched. He has like 14 siblings or something like that. His parents adopted a bunch of kids, like the best people, rock solid, and just a beast, like a freak football player too. So he's probably the epitome of you watch this guy on film or on the field and you're like, what a freak athlete, like what a machine. And then you see him off the field and you're like, no way. Like what who is this kid? But also like in the best way possible. One of the best guys out there.
I'm
Love
not
it.
judging the guy, but I don't think I will ever understand the appeal of anime. I didn't even like it when I was a kid.
No, me either. And I've told him that
You
time and
guys
time
never
and time
watched
again.
Pokemon at all?
I
Never.
did. I did watch
I never
Pokemon.
did.
Power Rangers. That's a lot
I
of the same
did.
stuff.
I also have this theory though. It's not even a theory at this point. I feel like everybody I know who watches anime are some of my favorite people. I don't know why, and I don't know what it is, but and I'll never watch it. Like I just never will. But I continue to meet people who will tell me they watch anime, and I'm like, I had no idea you watched anime. But like, you now fit in this category of people that I didn't know watched anime, but you're awesome. Like,
Yeah.
there needs to be a scientific study done on the people who watch anime and like where they fit in the
in the spectrum.
I don't even know. I don't know. I don't even know what the study is.
There are
The
definitely
spectrum
some
of
common
good people.
threads.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
spectrum of
There are-
goodness and
Yeah.
kindness.
There are common threads among those people. There's no question
There
about that.
are. There are.
Yeah.
There really are. So
That's
that's
awesome.
mine. He's awesome.
So mine is Lucas Giolito, starting pitcher for now the LA Angels. He was in Chicago. He got traded from Washington, where I played with him in minor league baseball. Went to Chicago White Sox, and then just got traded at the All-Star break for a handful of players, and they went over there. But yeah, same thing. He is the ultimate gamer, right? He just always on his. I think he's on the PlayStation, or actually no, he's a computer guy now. He went over to the computer stuff and does all that stuff. Plays Rocket League. I'm just like, dude, non-stop though with him. Like anytime he's like not at the field or whatever, if he's back at his place, he's gaming 100%
Who is
every
this
day.
again?
That
Lucas
computer stuff.
Yeah, Lucas Giolito.
Computer
heard of it.
gaming is another level of nerding out. Like
Right.
like there's gaming and then
Oh,
there's
yeah.
shows
Yeah.
and then there's computer gaming. I feel like that's when you reach the upper nerd level.
Yes.
Nothing
Actually,
wrong with
let's-
it. Great guys.
No,
Great,
nothing wrong
love
with
them.
any of
I
this.
love them.
100%. Right?
I
Like,
love
great-
nerds, man.
Dude.
They're some of my favorite people in the whole world.
And I'm a nerd as well, right? Like when it comes to Star Wars stuff, like anything like Star Wars, watched all the cartoons of it, right? Like Star Wars Rebels. I watched the Star Wars Lego stuff.
You're a big Star Wars guy? I didn't even know that.
Oh, big Star Wars guy, bro. Oh, all
So-
of the new stuff on Disney Plus with Ahsoka Tano, like all that stuff, like Mandalorian, anything.
Well, you're already saying names I don't recognize, but
So top in Star Wars. I'm self-proclaimed as well, but like there's different tiers of this, right? Like it's like, but Lucas, 100% any day of the week. If there's a nerd that everybody knew, like that everybody should know, like baseball fans, things like that, like yeah, he's the guy. So I played with some other guys that were probably bigger, but just more minor league guys and things like that. So, but yeah, great people, right? Like I absolutely
They-
love playing with
they
Lucas.
are.
Like he's just a big, like the dude's 6'8", like 250, 260, just a massive human being on the mound, right-handed pitcher, throws flames, dominant. Was in the running for the Cy Young last year with Chicago, like. But
Oh, damn.
again, like people don't realize like that we're all just people as athletes. And I think that's what the funniest part is understanding what's going on behind the scenes, in the locker room, behind closed doors, on the road, so it's just crazy. So
They're the
what's
best.
the nerdiest thing? What's the nerdiest thing about you, Chase?
The nerdiest thing about me? It's a good question. I don't know.
Oh,
Give me some time with it. The thing is,
okay.
I feel like the reason I love nerds is because I feel like nerds are like passionate people. Like when you talk to them about anime, like they go into another zone of passion that other people don't get into. And for me, I feel like I'm a very easily excitable person, and I like being around people that are that way too. And I feel like that's why when I talk to nerds, I'm like, dude, I could talk to you all day. Like I'll never watch anime, but I think that's why I click with nerds. In terms of the nerdiest things about me, I don't know. I know I have a lot. I feel like I got plenty of that stuff, but I don't have like a go-to like Star Wars, anime, that set stuff specifically. Give me some come back to me on
Yeah,
that one.
I don't really either. Like I'm trying to think. I would maybe say like I don't even know about myself. I'll have to think about that too. I mean, I'm pretty nerdy about going to the gym regularly. I'm
That,
jeez.
that's the dumbest thing.
I'm pretty
That's
nerdy
like-
about
what about-
growing
what
a
about, like,
your
what about,
biggest
like,
weakness
BYU
is being a
sports, Harper?
perfectionist.
I'm
That's
pretty
all.
nerdy
Her.
Are you a nerd when it comes to BYU sports?
oh, big time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big time.
So,
I'm
there
pretty
you go.
nerdy about the gospel and reading the Book of
gosh,
Mormon.
There it is.
Wow, you're
There it
such a
is.
good person with your
You
gym
are
and your
you are
gospel.
on this pedestal right now. Stay
Anyway.
safe up there.
I feel
I'm
like I'm
glad you
listening
guys-
to that interview where Michael Scott has to tell what's his name, like what his biggest weaknesses are. I don't remember what they
Yeah.
are, but I know they're ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm a perfectionist. That's my
Yeah,
biggest weakness. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. No, I love. Listen, I nerd out on muscle growth and just trying to better myself every day.
That's not bad. Okay, I have one. I love documentaries. Like I love documentaries. Like on a daily basis, I'm watching a new documentary.
On a daily basis?
On a daily basis, I'm probably
All right,
watching a
give us
new
some recent
documentary.
ones you've seen, man. Let's hear this.
Okay. One recently that was actually really heavy was Scouts Honor. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's about the Boy Scouts of America.
I did hear about it. I haven't
Oh,
seen it, but I
Heavy,
heard about it.
heavy.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to watch that one.
We could go into a whole hour on that one. That one's heavy. Um, Another one is called Live to 100. It's basically a documentary about the most concentrated places on the earth where there are a ton of people that live to be 100. And this guy goes to these places in like Japan and Italy and evaluates why are there so many people here that live way longer than everyone else in the world. And it's fascinating because I kind of nerd out on health and wellness stuff too. Like I have a pretty big hippie side. Like I love meditation. I love like super clean eating. There was a phase where I was like vegetarian, and I just like I'm passionate about like kind of the health net
Do
side
you
of
meditate
things.
every day?
I do. Yeah, I do.
How long do you do it for?
I do it for 10 minutes. Today I
Really?
went to this wellness spa and did like cold tub, hot tub, contrast therapy and did some breath work. So I love it.
Sheesh,
I
man.
like that stuff a lot.
I should do that more. I should meditate, honestly. I tell myself that all the time, and 10 minutes is a long time, but as you get used to it, I hear it kind of like those things kind of go by quickly as the
Yeah.
more and more you do it. Yeah.
Honestly, it's been a
And
huge blessing for me.
yeah. And when you
Yeah.
meditate, are you just like, what do you think of when you meditate?
So when I started, I just used the Calm app and I would just do like their daily meditation. And it's this 10-minute guided meditation where the lady walks you through basically like, okay, today we're going to focus just on our breath. Like count in and then out, in, out. Like you're just focusing on your breath. And anytime you find that your thoughts kind of carry away, because I'm a big time overthinker and I'm constantly like thinking about something, then there's like this it's kind of like the way that she guides you through it is, okay, if your thoughts have kind of wandered off, acknowledge your thoughts, like don't judge the thoughts, don't even think about the thought, just come back to the breath and focus
Mm.
on the breath. So it's more just finding a way to be as fully and completely present as possible. And I would say that's probably the other thing. I would say documentaries. I just really like documentaries and the health, wellness world and a little bit of the hippie stuff too.
I want to get into that in a second, because I actually had a question about that for you. But before we do, I wanted to ask, what do you think the biggest change on meditation you've seen, like when you've incorporated it into your life? What do you think it's helped you with the most?
Ooh, good question. Really good question. I would say for me, it's allowed me, and this is kind of a basic answer, but it really has helped me to be way more present in my daily moments. I'm such an overthinker. Like I'm constantly thinking and I'm constantly like, hey, I need to be doing something else, or I need to be like solving a problem, or I need to be thinking about what I did in the past or the future. Like that's just kind of how my brain works. And I'm spacey too, to the point where like my mind will immediately go to something else. And so it's just allowed me to be a lot more present in each moment and not let my thoughts kind of determine my momentarily experiences, but rather I can just be present a lot better. Not perfectly. Like I still that's like I
Sure,
think
yeah.
it's going to be a lifetime pursuit, but I think it's just helped with that.
And
How
then real
long ago did you
quick,
start this? Sorry.
very
It's
good.
I started it when I right out of college. I had some really bad back surgeries that really kind of messed things up and was a pretty tough time. And I it kind of took me back to my mission where I was like, I need to start having these spiritual experiences in the morning and I need to find a way to get back to like a better, healthier mental state because I just kind of wasn't after my back surgeries. I didn't, was kind of in a funk. And my brother, my oldest brother, told me about he's been meditating for years and he's had his stuff and it's just helped him a ton. And so I gave it a shot. And before that, I wasn't really into that world and it kind of took me down this life spiral rabbit hole of meditation, health, wellness, world, all of that.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
awesome.
haven't been consistent for that long, but that's when I started.
Yeah. I started meditating when I was dealing with all my on-field anxiety as well. Like I had to,
Hmm.
because I was worried about so many other things besides like executing the pitch that I was on. Right. I was worried about the hitter that I walked two batters before, or I was, oh, I need to have a shutdown inning here, because I got two guys on, I can't let them score because otherwise my ERA is going to spike and right, all this other shit
Right.
that I was like, I I have to do something, and I locked in to it probably 2014ish. I finally like just really like narrowed in like I need to do this,
Hmm.
and like the on-field breathing, like that's huge. Like what like coming set, like clearing that mind and like visualizing all that stuff. It was a game changer for me at least. I mean that my from 2014 to 2016 2017, it was just like anything. Here you go. Like I got this. It's
Yeah.
crazy how much that like breath and like that focus and that mental workout, right? Like everybody always talks about, you got to go, train and do everything, right? You got to have your body be ready to be able to put up with, in my case, 142 games, 162 in the big leagues. But 17 weeks of football, right? Like and OTAs and all that training camp and everything that you have to put in. Um, but that mental workout is just as important, which is, again, people don't realize, that we're all human, and we put just as much pressure on ourselves as they're as fans think that they're putting on us.
Totally. No, yeah, I love it. I can talk about this one all day. I love this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Going back to the documentary thing real quick, I wanted to say I've been watching a documentary. It's a series. It's on the September 11th.
Hmm.
It's on Hulu, and it's like 6 or 7 episodes. My goodness, it is riveting. Like
Really?
there's like a lot of crazy stories that people are sharing about their experiences, and the footage is incredible. So just wanted to
Is it a conspiracy
throw that up.
thing, or is it more just
No,
like what happened and
what
the
happened that
people's
day?
individual
Like it's
experiences? Gotcha.
specifically like what took place that day and like the
Yeah.
timeline. It really does the timeline very well. Like what had happened to the lead up to like the first building collapsing and then the second building, and like it has a couple people that were in some of the buildings that had
Hmm.
collapsed and things like that. Like it's pretty wild. But
That is wild.
anyway, all right, let's settle this debate once and for all. Who has it harder in a season, a baseball player or a football player? I'll give you two the
Good
Ooh.
floor.
question.
Should should we make the case for the other person?
That's a good
That's
question.
good, actually. That's good. I like that.
I
All
think
right.
if you're talking mentally and socially, I guess is the word I would use, it's got to be baseball. The length of time, baseball is, I don't know if we're just talking about the season, but on a yearly basis, the baseball schedule is outrageous. It's the craziest thing ever. Like, and it is the most mental game. Football, I feel like there's kind of a beauty to football in the sense where you can kind of go out there and just stop thinking and like just go and cut it loose, and that's part of the reason I love it. Baseball, I feel like the pace and there's so much to it. I feel like if any sport needs meditation, it's baseball because the length of the season, the length of the game, like just the whole process of baseball, it's crazy. It's why I couldn't play it anymore. I quit baseball like my junior year of high school because I was like, A, I got to pick one, baseball or football, and B, like I
It's
can't sit
methodical.
here. I can't sit here with my thoughts this often all day every day.
You're
So
you
that was
bring
the
up a
argument for baseball being harder.
you you bring up a really good point that I've never thought of before, that every other sport is very rhythmic. You can make that argument. Like football is rhythmic on the field, like you have the in between plays and then you have the play where it's like really intense. Basketball, same thing. There's no rhythm to baseball. Like it
Yeah.
really is like
See,
hold
I
on,
get
real
what you're
quick,
saying. I get what
Brian.
you're saying. Go
This
ahead. Go
isn't
ahead.
an
Go ahead.
insult. This is not an
No, no,
insult.
I
This
know,
is
no, I
like
know,
more
I
to
know,
say
I
like
know. Go.
because there are certain positions on the field that aren't affected at all, and that can happen
Right.
for 8 plays in a row. And so then all of a sudden they've got something coming their way, and they're like, oh shoot, like Bill Buckner, right? All of a sudden he's got
Bill
this grounder
Buckner.
coming towards him, and he's just like, like, and obviously it didn't work out for him, unfortunately, at that time. But that's my point, is that like
Yeah.
you kind of have to be on guard to not be on guard. But whereas
Right.
football, it's like it's really hard to miss the action for most players, especially if you're on defense. You can kind of make the action as much as you want to be involved. You just play to the whistle or whatever. Not to oversimplify things, obviously, but anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm speaking from being a pitcher, right? Like there is
Yeah,
a
I could
beauty
see
to it,
that
right?
more
Like
for sure. Yeah,
the
that's the
pitch
one position
selection,
that
right? Yeah.
controls that more for sure.
That and the catcher, right? But
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
position player, like you could go an entire game without even having a ball hit you at all, right? You could
yeah.
be just be sitting at your position and be like, okay, I haven't gotten a ball all day,
Mm-hmm.
and just sitting there. Like let's say left field, right? Let's say nobody hit the ball to left field at all that day,
Yeah,
you know. So
yeah.
no, I get that. The beat down of the body, right? Like obviously baseball's over 5 6 months of playing every single day and traveling and all that stuff, right? But the beat down that football brings to the body is just like, I mean, every week there's an injury, and like I just that's kind of my more the mind blowing thing to me is like the physical nature of football. Yeah, baseball is much more mental, and you know it does beat down the body. Don't get me wrong. Like traveling cross country and things like that. I mean, minor leagues is no joke. I mean, you're riding buses, 14, 15 hours and overnight, and then you got to play, you know, a 9 inning game. You got to be ready, you know. So, but yeah, it every sport has their physical nature, their mental nature, all that stuff, and body beat down, as I would say. But football, football and hockey, I think, are very similar. Obviously, I, in my own personal opinion, I think hockey's by far the toughest because they're playing an 80 game schedule, basketball schedule, and they're doing everything in football on skates, and it's just like it's nuts to me. So I mean, lane hits and things like that, and getting broken bones, and it's just they're playing through everything. They're honestly the most psychotic people I think I've ever met. Talking
Dude,
to
that's
hockey
a
players,
good
they
one.
were
It's a
crazy
really
to
good one.
me.
Yeah.
So
I've
like,
always said if I didn't play football and I could go back and redo it and just play a sport, it would either be hockey or tennis. So it'd be one of those two. But hockey is one of those where I'm like, man, I would have loved to have been a hockey player. But it's like it's also just the nature of the beast. It probably comes with a very similar,
yeah.
I mean,
And
physical.
I think basketball players would say that theirs is the hardest. Hockey players that like, whoever it is, right? They're going to say theirs is by far the hardest. But I'm like, I mean, go run on a soccer field. All right, cool, dude.
Hard,
Like,
hardest in different ways too.
yeah, exactly,
Like in
right.
terms
The
of like
endurance of
developing a
soccer.
skill and
Yeah,
the time you have to devote to developing a skill in the off season, like baseball, basketball, soccer, like that's all off season is you're going to have to develop a level of skill that you might not have to as much in football, where in football you have to get bigger, faster, stronger, and then physically just be able to hold up for a whole off season and to be able to deal with the pain. Like it's just kind of, they're so different, but I will say I think every single sport benefits from this meditative state. I read a book called Mindfulness for Athletes a few years ago that a bunch of us linebackers read, and it was awesome. Like it talks about the flow state, and it talks about the benefits of being able to get into that flow state and how to get there, and how it's been proven the way that you perform in any sport significantly better when you are just fully present and you're in that flow state. And that comes back to so much mental awareness and work and meditative overcoming the need to just like constantly be on my phone or like here or here or
Hmm.
here, because then you get in a game and you're everywhere except for right there. So it's interesting the way that those do crossover in my mind.
and those
And
flow states are unlike anything. Like that's like chasing a dragon, in my opinion. Those flow states, because that's where you're literally like in the zone. There's zero thoughts going on in your mind. There's like your mind is clear completely, in my opinion, and you just know what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like putting like the catcher putting down the sign. Yep, that's what I'm doing. Okay, here we go, and it's just like nothing, right?
Right.
And I coach now, and I talk to my players all the time. I'm like, hey, like you got to get into that state where you're just like mind clear, man, like clear it out. I said, you can't be thinking about other things. And like, I, things that I learned in pro ball, right? Things that I learned in college and all that stuff. Like I'm trying to impart that knowledge as quickly as possible to all these young kids now. And I'm like, hey, the sooner you can find that, and the sooner you can feel that, like your whole life's going to change, right? Because then now you're able to bring it into other aspects, and obviously all the positives that come from playing a sport as a youth. But yeah, I'm like constantly trying to push that onto them, be like, hey, like this isn't just about your sport, right? This is about life, man. So
Dude, get them to
Totally.
meditate. Get them to
yeah,
get your high schoolers to meditate, man. That could
Man, I'm
really be
telling
super
you,
beneficial.
yeah,
we start getting young kids to meditate. I think there's a lot of problems that are going to be solved with, well, what's social media going
social
to do to kids,
media,
and what's
right? Yep,
TikTok doing to kids? There's this
yep.
epidemic of loneliness because of social media and all these other things. Meditation and some of this breath work, in my mind, not to get, too far down this rabbit hole, but I think it could solve a lot of problems, especially and not just in sports. I think it carries over big time to kind of cheesy, but like a flow state in life where you're not having to hyper analyze every single decision, whether it's spiritual or social or whatever. You're just kind of confident in your present
Yeah.
moment.
You're just
So
there.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I
me nerding out on that.
no, dude, I
I
love it.
love it, man.
I think to your point, like if you're able to like regularly meditate and adopt that mindset, I think the desire to distract yourself through things like social media, and especially for these kids, I don't even have a TikTok, but like those that are like constantly just going through, scanning through videos and things like, I'm not even a big Instagram Reels guy. Like I get some sent to me from friends and things like that, but I don't really go through them on my own just because I don't meditate either, but I just have a hard time with this just like constant like stimulus. It's just hard
Hmm.
on me. But I think the kids that are used to that, if they were to adopt meditation, I feel like that desire might go down, where they're like, this just, it doesn't feel good for the body or something. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, I could. Yeah, I could. I agree. Agree.
Yeah.
He's chomping at the bit over there,
I
Chase.
am, man. We could
Yeah.
talk about this one all day.
Yeah.
This stuff gets me
I
hyped up,
love
and I
it.
hope one day I can like,
Oh,
be a part of something like that. So,
yeah,
For sure.
that's
Well,
awesome.
I want to ask real quick about one more thing, and then I kind of want to start the close out. I want to do one segment with hopefully all of us participating, and then I want to get into a quick gospel talk where, because I know Chase, I mean, you and I talked about, like, we just like sat down, just we were at a table, just me and you in the morning one time, just talking about gospel topics, and it was awesome. And it was
hmm.
really cool to kind of get your perspective on things, and I just kind of want to do that again randomly. But before we do that, I wanted to ask real quick. You are working on something that sounds really cool. A mutual friend of ours is involved in this, and that's why I'm kind of a little bit more familiar with it. But it's this product that you're putting together that's supposed to help athletes on the field specifically, where it's not just a quick burst of energy. It's like this longer, sustained type of energy that keeps you focused and things like that. Tell us about that.
Appreciate it, Harv. This would be a nice little
Of
plug
course.
for
Of
oomph.
course.
So
That's right.
basically, yeah, I'll try to make this my elevator pitch. Basically, in college before games, they had beetroot for us to take, which is really good for blood flow. And then the NFL in the locker rooms, they had things like 5 hour energies, caffeine, that kind of stuff. I just kind of realized a point in my football career that there was nothing very specifically designed for athletes to take before a game or a practice. Like there were pre workouts, there were stimulants, there was all this stuff kind of filled with junk. So me, Jason, my buddy Tanner, we kind of teamed up and made this product that's basically an all natural, super clean product that allows an athlete to take it before they practice, play, compete, race, hike, whatever it is. Basically, it's like an ultra clean product that has things like, red spinach and rhodiola, which is a root, and electrolytes, and these different nootropics, and it's just like a super clean product that's designed for athletes to help athletes perform at their peak. And so every ingredient that's in there is, all natural from the earth. Every ingredient is scientifically backed. Every ingredient is, very specifically in there to help an athlete in their endurance or with their energy, with their hydration, their focus. It's kind of an all, a product that's specifically designed for athletic performance with no caffeine, no crazy stimulants or additives. So it's something that I really wanted to do post football because it's not something I had, and I felt like there was an opportunity to make a product for athletes and individuals to take something like that wasn't just like this, that's not going to affect their sleep because it has crazy amounts of caffeine, or it's not going to affect their general health because it has all these additives in it, which I feel like I at times did. I kind of sacrificed my own health because I wanted stuff to help my performance. And so the whole concept is we're making a product that improves performance in a lot of aspects, mentally, physically, and also improves health. Like you're not sacrificing your health. So that's the whole concept. We're gonna have it end of this year, beginning of next year, and we're pretty excited about it. We think there's a lot of good opportunity to get it out there and improve performance, improve health, kind of in the health and wellness world, but also in the performance world a little bit. So yeah,
What's it called?
Yeah.
that's probably I need to shorten my elevator pitch, but that's the
Hey,
spiel.
man. Practice
It was
makes
a
perfect.
really
That
tall
was great.
building. It was a really tall
Yeah.
building.
That's
It was-
right.
It was
That's
a
right.
tall building, and it's
We're
called
going to
Oomph.
the penthouse.
For those of you who may hear this and want to know about it, OOMPH.
Yeah. Yeah. Jason told me he took one before your guys' hike last Saturday, which I was sad I missed, but it looked fun. And he was saying he just like, dude, never lost the energy, was just like in the zone, just freaking going to Red Pine Lake.
Yeah, there's good stuff in it, man. It sounds a little hippie because we got things like mushrooms and roots and red spinach in it. Not hallucinogenic mushrooms. This is very clean stuff. You know, we got
Maybe
this
you
all
should
certified.
say,
This
maybe you should try and pass it off as
maybe
a faux
that'll
hallucinogenic. That might get some
that'll
people
be
to
the
take
next product, maybe.
it. That's right.
Like
There
you
you go.
take one or the other, and one makes you hallucinate, the other doesn't. But
That's
The
right.
best
no,
things
it's
come from
it's
the
got
earth.
some good stuff in it. They do, man.
You know,
They do.
God put them here for a reason, right?
It's all
That's why we need
from
to be
the
able to
earth.
use them. Yeah, not being made in a factory. You know, being produced. You know, synthetically, all that crap. It's this is what God put on the earth for our consumption, and it's that's awesome for kind of going into that because I know from my experience, like our night games, right? Me performing in the back end of the bullpen, like I'm on field at 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And I have the adrenaline rush. I have the caffeine going through the veins, all that stuff, and I'm not going to bed till 1 or 2 in the morning, right? And then we got
Exactly.
a day game the next day, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm dead tired because I had 5 hours of sleep, and I have to be at the field at 10 a.m. So
Exactly. Well,
yeah,
man, we need to record that little clip, put it on social media, let people know there's a solution to that problem because now you're
I
going to be
got
taking
you.
a product that's going to improve the performance and then you're going to sleep the night of.
Well,
There
I
you
wasn't
go.
even thinking of this, but now you guys can connect to your contacts and freaking get oomph out on all different sporting events
There
as
we go.
possible,
There we
right?
go.
There you
Gotcha.
go, dude. Brian obviously got some contacts in the sports world.
I have a
Oh,
few,
sure.
to say the least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
All right. So the next segment is my favorite, and I don't know if I told you about it, Chase, but I don't know if Brian came prepared for it either. I did, so at least I've got something. But we have this segment called "People We Can't Be Friends With." So I feel like I have to re-explain this every time. You've got some questions, I can tell.
I'm
Um,
stressing is what I am
yeah.
after hearing the title.
So this is not a hard and fast rule. I say this a few times just to remind the listeners. It does not actually mean I can't be friends with these people because if that's the case, then like one of the ones that I did recently was life coaches under 30. And it was just merely pointing out that there's some people under 30 that take on this idea of life coaching and you're kind of like, but you haven't experienced life, so I don't get it. Um, things like that. When you're driving and like this type of driver
Somebody in
really
the fast
annoys
lane.
you. People with bad spatial awareness, like you're not actually not going to be friends with those people. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's just more like
Okay.
annoyances, grievances,
Okay.
things like that. So if
Pet
you can think of
peeves.
something, yeah, pet peeve, so to speak,
Pet peeves. Okay.
a more creative spin on that, where it's like, you know what? I see that person. I could never be friends with that person.
Okay.
So,
Got it.
I've got one. Do you have one, Brian?
I actually have I have a couple.
You have a few. You
Yeah,
you
I have a couple.
okay? All
Because
right.
I'm thinking more. Chase has spent time in a locker room, so I'm like, okay, well, like, what
This is
can I
good.
do, like, with a locker
Okay.
room? Like, okay,
That's
yeah,
good.
I'm
That's
good.
good. Okay, I'll go first then, so that way you
Well,
guys can kind of like we can segue into that, and you guys can kind of commiserate about some of those experiences. So, Mine is when you're in a group setting, a handful of people, like 5+ people, where you're just like all having a good time shooting the breeze. You're around the fire, whatever it might be. You're just like, this is awesome. We're having conversation is hot. Things are just going. And then out of the blue, somebody in the group keys in on you, and they're like, "Oh, Harper, this happened to me," and they're just like all of a sudden have this side conversation, and then they're like, "Check out this video. Look at this video," and it's a 2.5 minute long video, and you're like, "You have killed all momentum of this group dynamic that we have situated ourselves into right now." I hate that so much. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. It's the freaking worst, where it's like, no, just enjoy the atmosphere. Be involved in the conversation. We're all having a good time. It's fun. Like, everybody's contributing. And then all of a sudden you just like hit this speed bump, pull me over to the side of the road and just say like, "Hey, just you and I talk now for a little bit." It's like, no, I didn't come here for this. I didn't come here for this.
Killing the vibes,
It's
man.
so specific.
The vibe
It's
killer.
almost like it's happened.
No.
Yeah.
It's happened to every
I
single
can't
one of
wait.
us. Tell me that hasn't happened to you.
You're not wrong.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
That's the worst. When somebody's like, "Watch this video," and you're like, "This video's 4 minutes long."
I
Yeah.
know,
I
but
don't-
it's funny. It's funny. Watch to
Yeah,
the end.
you're just
Watch
like-
to the end. It's funny.
No, I'm sorry.
It's 5
No
minutes
video.
long.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I feel like I get that sometimes when I'm at a party and I get some like really, really intense football guy coming up to me and I'll come up and be like, "So, what do you think about the Saints this year? Like, what do you think about
Yeah,
the Patriots offensive line this year?" And I'm like, I would love to talk to you about this, but I really don't want to that
I
much.
don't want
Any
to.
other time.
Oh.
Well, and it's fine, like especially when it's people I know and I'm close to, and like I'm cool talking football. It's just when it's like a super hardcore football kid who like doesn't want to be social, but he knows football, so just wants to talk football. I'm like, buddy, I really don't want
Yeah.
to talk about this all night long.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of a side, probably
It
a
is.
small
That-
sliver.
Yeah,
of
no,
an
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
100% one right
That's a
there.
subcomponent for sure.
That's a
For
good one.
sure.
Subcomponent, yes.
All right, Brian, you wanna transition us over into the athlete
So-
dynamics? I'm excited for this.
Chase, been in the locker room, right? Understand kind of locker room dynamic, right? On first question, did you pick your locker or were you assigned lockers and locker mates?
I think I was assigned lockers always. I don't think I ever picked my locker. Yeah.
Okay. Now, we were assigned right in spring training, but when it came to like going to our affiliates like that, we kind of, if we were returning, we would call the club and be like, "Hey, I want this locker. Like, give me that locker." Right? Like,
Gotcha.
that was one thing. However, people I can't be friends with, I'm changing into people I can't be locker mates with. And it's the messy, stinky teammate that we all have and we all know who it is being right next to me. Where all of their stuff somehow ends up in front of my locker, and then I have to kick it over to the side and be like, "Yo, what are you doing? Get your stuff and clean it up and put it in your locker." So people
Having
I can't be
lived
locker
with
mates
Brian,
the messy,
I
stinky
can-
person.
100% attest to how frustrated he would be in that situation. He, like, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I consider myself to be a pretty clean person. Brian is pristine. Like, it is pristine and always pristine, to the point where I'm like, "You know what, dude? You just do your thing. I'm good with it. We'll do whatever you need to do."
Man, in the locker room is its own little ecosystem. You've got the
bad.
guys who like they need 3 lockers of space, but they only have 1 lockers. And if you're next to one of those guys, their stuff is always in your space. And you're like, "I can't come back to your crap in my space every single day." So I definitely relate to what you're talking about because oh man.
You know
Here's the
who it
thing.
is, right? That's the thing. Is like you can name teammates that you played with where you're like, "Yo, yep, I definitely did not like being next to him, or I would hate to be next to him, looking across the locker room and be like, yo, I do not want." We can be teammates, but we can't be teammates. We can't be locker mates.
I agree. I have one exception to the rule. It's when I was locker buddies with Cam Jordan, and he would get gifts from people and free stuff on a daily basis to where it's like overcrowding his locker. But on a daily basis, maybe not a daily basis, a weekly basis, he'd be like, "Chase, you want this jacket? Like, I'm never going to wear this." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take it." Like, it's some nice new, like, Saints jacket. And I'm like, Cam, just anytime you get free stuff, give it to me. So that was like
Oh,
my exception, was when his stuff would creep over into my area, sometimes he would just give it to me. And I was like, yeah,
yeah.
cool,
Oh, see, but
cool.
That's where
those
you
are the
draw
best
that
locker
line.
mates. No,
Yeah.
those are the best locker mates. Those are people
When
I
you
want to
draw
be
the
locker
line and
mates
say,
with.
if it
That's the
crosses this line, it's
antithesis to
mine.
all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just draw a line and you're like, hey, anything that crosses, I'm taking, just so you know.
Yeah.
Well, and it works because I know anything he's getting is like
Yeah,
fancy.
it's legit. Yeah,
Is the yeah.
I love it.
that's a
What do
good
you
one.
what do
You
you
had
got,
another
Chase?
one, Brian, or we on to Chase?
Oh, people that don't pick up their dog poop after they walk their dog and they're just sitting and smelling up this park.
Good one. Good
That's a
one.
good one.
I
Yeah,
hate that.
yeah. What would you
Or
do if you found out one of your friends did that?
I'd yell at them and throw a bag at them and tell them to go pick it up.
Oh, okay. But like, what if Casey was like, I never pick up Frank's poop? What are you gonna do about it, Brian? You gonna be like, I'm sorry,
That's
our friendship is now over officially.
we are now just friends. We're not best friends.
Oh, okay.
I'm downgrading.
Downgraded. There you go. Okay. All right, Chase, on you, man.
The first thing I thought of when you said this one, and this one might be a little bit basic, but it's like it's the slow walkers in my life, and it's not specifically a slow walker. Like I have slow walkers in my life, but like when I go to Disneyland with you, if you're like not ready to go like from ride to ride, and like you're not ready to like pick that pace up big time, then I can't be your friend. Because I'm
That's
like a
good.
hardcore Disneyer. Like when I go to Disney, I'm like, you're
Nerd.
not coming with me. It is. It is.
There it
It
is.
is. It is. There it is. It is. I'm like, I'm not going to, you're not coming with me if you're going to be that person who's like, can we just take a break? Like, can we just go eat? Like, can we just like relax? I'm like, no, like, don't come with me if you don't want to like go to like every ride. Like, we're going to plan the ride, we're going to it. And the crazy thing is, I feel like I know I'm the person who other people probably talk about, and they're like, I couldn't be friends with that person because they're like too hardcore about Disney. And I'm looking at them like, good, then we can't be Disney friends. We can be
Yeah.
friends in any other aspect of life, but we can't be Disney friends because it's a very specific criteria. I went with some friends like a few months ago. I actually went for my birthday, my 30th birthday. I went to Disneyland. I guess I am like that's nerd status. And they were so hardcore, and I loved it.
Who are these?
That's
Who are
awesome.
these? Like, where were these friends from?
They were
I don't
from
need to
the
know who. I don't need to know names, but I'm saying like, are they like current friends that are just like y'all are on the same wavelength,
yeah,
or was it like a
kind of.
specific group of people that you're like, I'm gonna go to Disney with them because I know they're gonna do it right?
It was more that way, where I
Gotcha.
like we would talk about it a little bit here and there, and they would kind of put out these kind of make these comments about, I'll go to
Yeah.
Disneyland, but I'm not going to go unless you like want to do this and this and this. I'm like, I absolutely do. Like, I
This
will
is a
go hard.
this is a genre of person that you can just pick up on like at a party. Like, I'm not
It
gonna
is
lie, I'm feeling like
like we
strong,
click.
moving quickly
Yeah.
between the lines at a Disney park vibes from you.
Yes,
And they're
the
like, you're that
best.
way, I'm that way.
The best part about this experience was one of the hardcore Disneyers who came. She has diabetes, and that's not the good thing, but she got a disability pass, and like we didn't stop. We went from ride to ride to
Right to
ride
the
to
front.
ride. So I had to keep
Oh
up with
my
them. Like
God.
I was like getting the big pickles and the fruit and like running up and catching them, but
That's amazing.
it was magical.
That's
That's
awesome.
hilarious. Yeah, for
Yeah.
me at a party, I pick up on the vibes of like, how are they politically? Like Trump comes up in conversation, they roll their eyes, and I'm just like, "Ugh,
They,
okay,
they
don't.
they they tell you they loved the Barbie movie, and you're just like, oh,
Yeah, exactly.
I
They
can't I
love
can't
the
talk to
Barbie
this
movie,
person.
and I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, stuff like that. Or if they're like
Yeah,
talking about Bidenomics and how great it is for our country, I'll be like, cool. Now this conversation's over. Anyway,
didn't
um,
that happen recently? I feel like that happened recently with somebody.
are you? Do you actually know that? I'm sure it did.
No, when I went, no, it was when I was with, it was when we were together, but it wasn't very dramatic. It was more like we were having a conversation with someone,
Oh
and you
yeah, I
found
think I
out they were
remember.
a little bit different politically than you thought, and it was kind of like, we better stop. Like, we better
Yeah.
just cut this off.
It's like I better stop talking, or else you're gonna want this conversation to
But
end.
the good news is we all remained friendly, and it wasn't a bad
That's
thing.
right.
It was a
We can
great trip.
coexist. I'm all about it.
Exactly. That's
I'm
the
all
silver
about it.
lining. Yeah.
Well, speaking of things like that and seeing them differently, to kind of close out here on our very, very last segment. So what we like to do on this podcast is kind of bring kind of a spiritual sense back to it. Like, it doesn't have to be like uber spiritual where it's just like boom, honing in, but it's more just like, hey, this is something I've been studying lately. This is something I've been thinking about lately, like a talk I read recently, and it really resonated with me for this reason. So something that I wrote down. This would have been about a month ago, and I think it's fascinating because we see this a couple times in the scriptures, and I'll reference those times in the scriptures. And I think we're seeing a growing movement of this, so to speak. For one, I think a lot more people are leaving the church now than they ever have before. I think that's been growing gradually over the years. That's just my opinion. That's just how I've seen it. I could be wrong. Um, and then furthermore, I think people that are doing that can become progressively embittered. Now, that doesn't apply to all of them, right? Because I've seen people leave the church that are just like, I'm just going to live my life and you can live yours, like, good for you, like, all for it. And I love that. Like, we could still coexist and all that. But one thing that's fascinating is that in the Book of Mormon, it does specifically talk about what happens sometimes to people that do leave what they once thought was truth and how they react to it. And so this is what I wrote down. People who were once members of the church become more hardened against it once they leave. In Alma 24:30, it says, and thus we can plainly discern that after a people have been once enlightened by the Spirit of God and have had great knowledge of things pertaining to righteousness, and then have fallen away into sin and transgression, they become more hardened, and thus their state becomes worse than though they had never known these things. And then in Alma 47:36, it says, now these dissenters having the same instruction and the same information of the Nephites, yea, having been instructed in the same knowledge of the Lord, nevertheless, it is strange to relate, not long after their dissensions they became more hardened and impenitent and more wild, wicked, and ferocious than the Lamanites, drinking in with the traditions of the Lamanites, giving way to indolence and all manner of lasciviousness, yea, entirely forgetting the Lord their God. And then my question is, why does that happen? Why do people become more hardened? Is it cognitive dissonance? If they choose this lifestyle over the church, are they just hell-bent on proving their decision right by being more aggressive about it? I don't have the answer. Those are just my questions, things that I've been thinking about, where it's like, are people trying to prove to themselves more than anything that their decision is the right one? And so that's why they're super aggressive about adopting this new lifestyle and rejecting their old one. I don't know.
I think so. Just a quick off the hip, I would say so. Because I'm trying, like, if they've been ingrained by something and then trying to go out of their way to change their views, right? Be ingrained and then almost become aggressive, right?
Yeah.
On the other aspect. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and they also could genuinely be bitter. You know, they could genuinely believe that what they were in for a long time is a lie and that they were screwed because they lived a life that, I don't know, wasn't true to them. I guess I think that's where I have a hard time fully understanding um, the bitterness side of it, because in my mind, there's nothing. I shouldn't say nothing because everybody's experiencing
Sure.
the gospel and in the
Yeah.
church is different, but there's very few negatives to living the gospel. You know, it's kind of like the concept that if God came down today and said it wasn't true, I don't feel like I would be all that bitter. You know what I mean? Because I feel like, true or not true, and this isn't what defines truth for me, but true or not, I feel like it's added a lot of quality and happiness to my life. And maybe others just can't say the same. Maybe it's, I don't know. It's hard to say because people are complicated, and I feel like these situations are complicated. But I think there's a scenario where they genuinely don't believe it anymore for whatever reason, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and they feel cheated, or they feel like tricked or
yeah.
duped, or they gave too much of their tithing. I don't know.
No, that's a really good point. You're right. There's absolutely people that could feel that for real. And not that I'm saying everybody's faking it to some degree, but I think it's interesting that it's incurred kind of similarly to a lot of people, that there is a common trend. And I don't know. Part of me just wonders, is it just because the devil is that convincing? But I don't know.
No, yeah. I was kind of playing devil's advocate there, where I do think that
Oh, I totally get it.
there's a number of
It's good.
situations
Yeah.
where, I mean, I talk to people about this often. I think it's fascinating. You know, I want to talk to people who have left the church and have had different experiences, and I want to know like where they're coming from. And it's, you know, everyone has their own thing, but
For sure.
it's rarely the same reason, and the bitterness sometimes is what's hard for me to always grasp.
Yeah, totally. All right, Chase, do you have something for us? And then we can close out with Brian. If not, no worries, man. I didn't even warn you
No,
about
dude,
this, so no.
don't even stress. I've had some good experiences lately.
I don't doubt
Um,
it.
I'll just say this. I listened to a talk yesterday that I kind of stumbled upon and didn't even know existed. And it was Neil Neil A. Maxwell.
Love Maxwell.
Yeah, I don't feel like I've heard much of his stuff, but I kind of stumbled upon it. It's called The Tugs and Pulls of the World. Um, and I mean there's a bunch of stuff I could probably pull from, but the main thing I got from it is that there is so much noise. There is so much pulling us in different directions in the world. And I feel like I feel this on a daily basis where I'm like, man, I got to get off social media. Like I got to find ways to set timers on my social media. I got to find ways to, I don't know, just date in a way that is healthy for me spiritually rather than just being like a casual dater because I'm not married. And it just was an awesome talk, and it talks about how it's never gonna stop. Like in order to combat the tugs and pulls of the world in the world of Neil A. Maxwell, like you have to be prepared for it. Like you have to have a foundation to stand on. Otherwise, you're constantly going to be tugged and pulled in different directions. And it's kind of like the concept of if you don't stand for anything, something you'll fall for anything.
Mhm.
And I've become a huge believer in what young Chase was taught about the armor of God, which is that when I'm not like daily focused on having spiritual experiences, I'm constantly tugged and pulled in different directions. And I don't even realize it until I'm 2 weeks later not having had a spiritual experience and I'm, in left field making bad decisions or doing something stupid and I'm not on my foundation anymore, that I feel like all of a sudden it becomes noisy. And yeah, it was just an awesome talk and a great testimony builder in the concept of not only having a foundation, but being able to see things and hear things clearly in a world where there's so much chaos and so much noise, where it's so hard to know what's true. And I'm daily trying to strengthen my testimony and my faith because there's a lot of stuff I can say I don't know is true still in the church and the gospel. There's stuff I don't fully understand, but I feel like my testimony has always been really strong, but not to the point where I'm like, I know for a fact that this and this and this. I just feel like I'm on this daily pursuit of strengthening my testimony and my faith, and I try to go about it in a very honest way because I don't want that confirmation bias, right? I think it's
Right.
also important that we as members of the church, if we're going to go look at it the other way around, I don't want to believe something just because it's the organization I'm a part of says it's true. And I mean, it's good to follow the prophet, but I want to gain my own witness of everything, and
Yeah.
that's just kind of how I am.
Which is
It's like
what the
And
prophet's been
revelation.
telling us lately.
yeah, and I love it.
Yeah.
I love Nelson, man. He's awesome. Um, and so I think that's the only way to avoid being tugged and pulled in every which direction the world chooses is to have like this solid foundation and then to continually add to it by having these spiritual experiences personally and not just leaning on, well, the church said this or this person said this. It's kind of like a political party. It's like I'm more conservative. Let's say the conservative party said, well, this is who we are now as conservatives. I mean, imagine if I was just like, yeah, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
regardless of whether or not I completely believed it, it would make me kind of a fraud because I'm not really deciding for myself if I believe it or if it's true. I don't know.
You're
I'm kind
more
of spinning in
tribal
circles
than
here.
personal. No, no, I get what you're
Exactly,
saying
Yeah,
though.
exactly.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you're more about the tribe than you are about your own personal beliefs. And a lot of people
Yes.
do that are insecure. And I think that ties back to something that I've talked about before, which is, when we just want to fight with the other side and not try and actually just believe what we're fighting for. And if we start to love the fight more than the values that we're defending, then we've lost ourselves.
Well said.
Similar
Yeah,
to
very,
that.
very well said. And I guess to tie a bow on mine, the whole thing, the whole experience I had while listening to this talk was I want to be someone who is able to hear and identify truth. And in my mind, that's through Christ, that's through the gospel, and that's through having that foundation and continually building it upon it. Because I don't think anyone's
Absolutely.
immune to the tugs and pulls of the world. I think we all are like at risk. And yeah, that was a cool moment I had this week with the talk.
That's cool, man. Love it. Thanks for
Awesome.
sharing. All right, Brian, close us out.
So over the weekend I went back home to Vegas over the weekend, and I had a youth fireside talk that I had to give, and it was kind of the same kind of spiel that I've given, but it was cool to have more of a youth audience about my conversion, things like that, coming back to the church, getting back active, being able to attend the temple for the first time this year. And it was just really cool because I had a handful of parents that were there as well. And one lady individual, she came up to me after and she's like, I absolutely loved your story. Like, and I have such a deep respect for your parents for never giving up on you and just loving you no matter what. She's like, I've had family that have struggled with their testimonies and their children, my children have struggled as well. And like, that's what I've always tried to do is just love on them and just, always be accepting no matter what. And it was just really cool to kind of see that and just realize how blessed I am to have the parents that I have for loving me and to the, from the beginning to the end, like that doesn't matter, and, they were always just there because I was their kid and, the love that they showed me. So it was a really cool thing just to kind of experience, or share my experiences with the youth, but also have that experience of, realizing how lucky I am to have the parents that I have. So it was really cool.
Well, as somebody that's met your parents and rubbed shoulders with them a few times, I can attest to that.
I appreciate
Freaking
that.
love Ron and Sherry, man. Great, great people.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate both of you guys, Chase especially, for taking the time. I did not actually think we would go this long, but thanks for taking the time and joining us on this podcast, man. We'd love to have you back if you would join us again at any time.
Glad to be back, man. It was a blast. I like these kind of conversations and this kind of
That's
stuff.
right,
I
dude.
love it.
That's right. All right,
That's
brother.
awesome, Chase.
Well,
Thanks so much, man. I had a blast talking, obviously, athlete to athlete, things like that, and different mindsets. But it's all the same.
Oh, so not for me. Meaning, I just have to
No,
sit
it's
to the
cool.
side and just enjoy the
it's
show.
cool to have because I wasn't active when I played, right? Like,
I'm so sorry I can't provide awesome conversations for either of you.
Whatever. Yeah,
I'll
go toe to toe. I'll go toe to toe with any of you on the pickleball court. I'll go toe to toe with any of you.
Whatever.
No, I'm just
Make it
kidding.
make
I
it
love you
happen.
guys.
Greatly appreciated, Chase. You're
Love
you're
the
an awesome
insight
guy.
both of you guys brought to that. Seriously.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys. It was
awesome.
fun. I enjoyed it. Nice to
Alrighty.
meet you, Brian.
Yep.
Yeah, you as well.
Have a good one.
See you.
Well,
See you, man.